Hi World Changers, this is a slight different format to my usual coaching week. My coaching week this week is all about foraging to support our immune system, and really foraging is all about getting outside to forage for things. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do a pre-recorded video, and I'm going to go outside and just show you all the things that are available for foraging just now. So that's all the berries, all the autumn berries are still around, elderberries, brambles, we've got hawthorn berries, sloe berries are starting to come as well. So there's still quite a lot of stuff out there to forage for. One of the key things really when you're foraging for anything is to be 100% sure of what you're picking. There are many berries that look similar. There's lots of red berries that look similar. They're not all edible, or even some of them are toxic. So you really do need to be very careful of what you're actually doing. So that's why I'm going to head out and I'm going to show you exactly. You need to look at the leaf shape, how the berries are growing. Things like, obviously, brambles, most people know what they are. Nettle seeds is another thing that I'm going to show you because they're still around. And again, most people know nettles. And that's a good way to actually start. If you're going to start and you're interested in foraging, is start with one thing at a time until you're 100% sure that you know what you're doing. And then you can sort of, in the next year, you can do something else and then do something else, which is kind of what I've done, to be honest. But if fermenting is my first love, but fermenting and foraging just is a match made in heaven. It works so incredibly well because you know that you can actually preserve all of your foraged finds. You can preserve them if you ferment them, but you can also preserve them in other ways, in brandy and vinegars and things like that as well. So we can keep them and we can use them throughout the changing seasons to support our immune system. Now, all the autumn berries are all incredibly beneficial for our immune system. They're all high in vitamin C. They have tons of polyphenols, loads of bioactive compounds that our wee gut microbes can use. Really 70% of our immune system exists in the gut. So it's really important that we nourish our little gut microbes who actually are part of our immune system. And it's a really good way to do that by getting forage food. It's also diversity, and you know, forage food is seasonal food at its best. You can only pick it when it's growing, when it's available, and that's also when it happens to be best for us. So again, nature really has us covered. So I'm going to head out and I'm going to be showing you various different things. And tomorrow, what I'm going to be doing is to show you what you can do with the things that we've actually found. So that will be tomorrow, and Thursday is my last session of the week, and I'm going to be talking about medicinal mushrooms. I absolutely love mushrooms. I'm a massive fan of them. They have so many benefits for our health. There are so many different types of mushrooms. And again, I would not recommend that anybody goes foraging for mushrooms because there are many that are similar and they're not all edible, and you can really make a mistake and cause yourself some damage. So really it's going to be talking about the medicinal mushrooms that we can buy, of which I use as well, and there are many of them. You can also use the grow kits to grow your own, which is fantastic fun. I grew lion's mane mushrooms last year, and they are just the most beautiful things. They're so lovely you don't actually want to eat them, but I did eventually because they also have many benefits for health. So on that note, it's kind of dry just now, so I'm going to head out and find some foraged goodies that we can discuss later on in the week. So here is a plant that most people will recognise. It's a nettle, or jaggy nettle as we call it in Scotland. What I'm out foraging for today is not the leaves, it's actually the seeds. If you can see underneath here, there's a lot of lovely little green seeds. Nettle seeds are absolutely fantastic. They actually have more benefits than nettle leaves do. Incredible for adrenal support. They support our liver and kidney function. They are packed full of minerals. They're packed with iron. They just give you a real energy boost. So you get like a boost that you would get if you had like a couple of espresso coffees, but you don't get the crash. And these work incredibly well. If you can see here, these plants here, the seeds are all nice and green. Now, nettles have male and female nettle plants. These are the female nettle plants that have the good seeds. If you look down here, you can see these sort of white, these are useless. These are male nettle seeds, so they're useless, so don't bother picking them. You really just want to get the nice dark green female nettle plants. And as it's really easy to dry these, you can dry them out and then you can store them to use in many different ways. I use them, I add them to energy bites, I add them, sprinkle them in soups and do all sorts of things with them. They do taste a wee bit nettly, but they're really quite pleasant. So that's a fantastic one, and we're still just in time to get They're just starting to go over now, but you should be able to still find plenty of green nettle seeds. To harvest these, what you can do is you can either just pinch the nettle seeds off. They're not really that jaggy. Or what you can do is just bring your secateurs and get a basket and just snip off the branches, and then you can take them home, put your gloves on, and you can just snip off the leaves and then take the nettle seeds off. So that's a fantastic thing still to forage. So if you have nettles nearby, you go and have a look and see if there's any lovely nettle seeds on them. So that's plant number 1 for foraging. Right, second plant that we can forage in the autumn is one that I think most people know. These are known in Scotland as brambles, and England are known as blackberries. Right, if you look at the colour of these, they are really, really dark. They're really high in anthocyanins, which is fantastic support for the whole body, feed our gut microbes, really high in vitamin C, tons of polyphenols in them, and the darker the colour, the more benefit they have. The other good thing, as I said really about brambles, is most people know what a bramble looks like. Be aware that they're actually really jaggy, so they almost kind of tempt you in with their beautiful sort of jewelled berries, and then you can end up getting really caught up in the thorns. So it's still absolutely time for collecting brambles. They're still ripe. You get them before the first frosts come, and then, as I said, if the frosts come, they're into mush, so you're too late. So get out and have a wee look and see if you still have brambles growing round about you. Then go and start collecting them. You can freeze them, and I'm going to be showing you various other things that you can do with them. So that's brambles. Right, here is another amazing berry for the immune system that you can still forage for. This is elderberry. If you look at the shape on the tree, if you're foraging, you just make sure that you're getting exactly the right thing. You can see the leaf shape, and elderberries, they tend to grow in that kind of shape. And that these ones are absolutely perfectly ripe and just ready for picking now. You don't want to pick any of the unripe ones. Can you see here, the green ones, these are actually toxic, so you don't want to pick any of these. You just want the ones that are totally black. Elderberries are incredibly antiviral, probably one of the most antiviral plants around. They make fantastic elderberry syrup. You can make elderberry infused honey. Fantastic for coughs and colds and viruses. I also use them to put into my infused brandy, which I add lots of other berries to. So I'm just going to forage for some more of these. And what I do with these is I also dry them out, so I dehydrate them. They can also be frozen. And what I'll do is I will show you what's the easiest way to process them and get them off the stalks. But these are just fantastically ready to and ripe just now. So elderberries are one of probably the top berry for your immune system. Again, as I've said with the brambles, you look at the dark colour, really high in anthocyanins, incredibly high in vitamin C, and they're antiviral and really support our immune system. So these are a fantastic one to have coming into the autumn and into the winter to protect our health and support our immune system. So that's one key one. If you see any elderberries growing around, then go and harvest these ones. Okay, so that's elderberries. We're going to go and see if we can find some hawthorn berries next. Right, here's a nice surprise. I've just been going up to try and find some hawthorn berries, and I've come across all these little mushrooms. Now, you do need to be incredibly careful when you're foraging mushrooms, so please don't pick any mushrooms at all if you can't identify them 100% sure. These are tiny little... These are little puffball mushrooms, and if you get them at the right stage, they are absolutely delicious. They're really lovely and firm, quite meaty. What happens is once they start to lose their firmness, a little hole appears in the top and the spores come out the top. So that's how these mushrooms spread, by spores. But oh, they smell really nice and mushroomy. So that one feels slightly squishy. Oh, I think these ones might just be okay. I was lucky enough to find a giant puffball last week. It was about the size of my face, so that was absolutely delicious. So we ate that one. So I'm going to harvest just a few of these little puffballs, and we can slice them up, fry them up, and they'll be nice to eat. But as I've said, please do not pick any mushrooms at all unless you're 100% sure, because there's quite a lot of lookalikes. These are puffballs. You've got other mushrooms called earth balls that look quite similar, but they're not edible, whereas these ones are. So that's just on my side, so I don't want anybody to go and pick mushrooms and say that I said they were okay. Okay, so let's go and see if we can find some hawthorn berries now. Right, I've managed to find some hawthorn berries. If you come, you can have a wee look at the leaf shape. Hawthorn is a really distinctive leaf. And again, there are many berries that are red in nature, and obviously they're not all safe to eat or to use. Hawthorn berries, or haws as they're known in Scotland, they actually, you can check the way that they grow as well. So you can see the wee distinctive leaf shape, and they grow. There's a little cluster of them all attached to the stem. So that's two ways that you can actually identify them. The other thing about haws is they're not juicy berries. So if you squash them, you can see they're kind of mealy inside. They look like little tiny miniature apples. But these ones are just nice and ripe, and these are ready to use now because they're not at the beginning of the season. They're really hard and they don't work. I use these to make hawthorn ketchup, which is delicious, and I also use them to put into my infused brandy. Hawthorn traditionally is used for heart and circulation, and it's incredibly good for grief and emotional stuff as well, for emotional release. I don't know so much about all of the medicinal side of things. I just use all these things because they're free and they're ready at the right time to support an immune system. So I use them as a preventative thing rather than to cure anything. So you really need to speak to a herbalist if you actually want to use these in a medical field. So that's hawthorn berries. So I'm going to go and harvest some of these, and then we'll see if we can find some rose hips next. Right, I've just actually, I'm on my way back from collecting some hawthorn berries, and I've come across these other red berries which look quite similar, but this is actually Cotoneaster, which is not remotely edible at all. If you come in, you'll see the leaf shape. It's a totally different leaf shape as opposed to the hawthorn one. They are much smaller berries, and they're attached slightly differently. Yeah, they're also squidgy, but they're kind of orange inside, so they are absolutely not edible. So let me show you for comparison. That's hawthorn, hawberries with the leaf shape, and you can see how the berries are growing like that, and these are much more attached to the actual stem. So hawthorn berries, yes, we're going to use these ones. These ones, I think they are Cotoneaster, so absolutely not these ones. So that's one of the key things to remember when you're actually out foraging. Make sure that you 100% know what you're collecting, and check the ID, check the leaf shape, check how the berries are growing, because there are a lot of berries that look quite similar, and they're not all edible, and some of them are toxic. So that's a key rule. Do not pick anything you're not 100% sure of. So that's hawthorn. Okay. Here is another berry that you can have. This is actually called a sloe berry, and it makes fantastic gin. It's a wee bit early in the season for picking it. I usually leave it until just before the first frosts. They're really quite astringent, so you wouldn't really want to eat them, but they do make fantastic sloe gin. So I might harvest some of these just to put in our brandy, which will be ready for Christmas then. So that's just an additional one if you see it anywhere. But I noticed that there was loads of it growing just down beside us during lockdown. So yeah, you can see they just look like tiny little black plums. So yeah, that's another good one to look out for. Right, this is the last plant that I want to show you here. This is rugosa rose hips, these big giant rose hips, and this is a beautiful flower. They smell absolutely gorgeous. So these rose hips are big, fat, squishy ones. They make fantastic oven roasted. You can oven roast them. They're a bit like sun-dried tomatoes. There's also other things you can do with them, and we're going to be adding them to our infused brandy. The small ones, which I'll show you, there's some of them further up, but these are the great big giant ones, which are fantastic. Rose hips during the war were actually in commercial production, because rose hip syrup was something that was given to all the kids and whatever, because rose hips have actually got about 20 times more vitamin C than oranges had, and during the Second World War there wasn't any oranges, so everyone was out gathering rose hips. And rose hip syrup really is quite delicious. You do need to add quite a bit of sugar to it though, but that preserves it. and the way, depending on the way that you make it, you can, if you do it as a cold infusion, then you don't lose all the vitamin C. But anyway, it is a really, really good plant, and there's still loads of rose hips around, and there's also other minerals and vitamins in rose hips as well. And that is a plant that most people, again, will recognise. So these are the great big fat rugosa ones. A lot of these actually grow at the coast. You find a lot of these growing along the sea front. So these are rugosa rose hips. So we're going to collect some of them, and I'll just show you quickly what the other smaller ones look like, but I'm sure most people will know what they are. This is the rose hips that most people are probably familiar with. They're the smaller ones. You might remember them from school days. We used to be called itchy coos because they're full of wee irritating hairs, and annoying boys used to put them down your back just to annoy you. But anyway, these rose hips are fantastic, and they are perfect for harvesting just now as well. So that's what rose hips look like. And again, as I've said, fantastic support for the immune system. So I'm just going to gather a few more bits and pieces, and I shall see you tomorrow, and then I'm going to show you all the amazing things you can do with them.